On today's show, what made the LA Clippers defense a totally different animal this year? Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You were locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team, every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA. Just finished my 20th season as a Clipper fan. Been covering the team for 5 years on my own LA sports and LA and NBA-centric YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, and 3 years right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team, every day. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell on the road to 8,000 subscribers, and you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to get great deals last minute on tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about why the Clippers defense was, in my opinion, the best defense we've had in my 20 years of fandom. I pointed down to point of attack, Big Zoo, and the defensive focus. So let's begin with the most important thing, in my opinion, for a great modern defense. Point of attack defenders, aka perimeter defenders. Guys that can navigate screens well and get over them. Guys that can slide their feet. Preferably guys with a little bit of length and size, because we have a lot of bigger point guards today. But you need someone that is going to not allow your big man to feel like they're guarding two people at once. That's the main thing. You want guys that can keep a man in front, but a lot of today's NBA is not just isolation, it's pick and roll into isolation. So you need guys that are good navigating screens and they're not relying on their big man that they're guarding pick and roll with to guard two at once. Now, the likes of Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, those guys, Evan Mobley even, who won Defensive Player of the Year this year, those guys can kind of guard two at once. In 2023 and in 2024, the LA Clippers showed that they did not, that Ivica Zubac could not guard two at once. Yes, sometimes he'd have moments of contesting a shot and then getting a rebound against his own guy, but a lot of times guys would come off of screens, and Ivica Zubac had to guard two guys at once. He'd have to step up to the ball handler, and they just lob it over his head, and there would be an alley-oop, and everybody would say, Zoo can't guard in space. Zoo can't guard. This guy torches him. He gets outplayed by every good center. Well, did every one of those good centers have a guard that could get in the paint? Because in 2023, the Clippers were 17th in defensive rating. So below the bottom half of the league, 17th. In 2024, we were 16th, so still bottom half of the league. What changed in 2025? Kawhi Leonard, who's a very good defender, missed 45 games. The difference is, and I kept saying this, if you go back in the receipts, this is something I said that actually aged well. I said if Ivica Zubac is not a bad defender, he just needs guys that can get over screens with him. And our best point of attack defender for the last 2 seasons was Terrence Mann. And I love Terrence Mann. I was called a Terrence Mann stan. I was, called all sorts of names about how, quote unquote, delusional I was about his abilities. But he was just the best option that we had at the time. And Terrence Mann, I always said, and again, I think this also aged well, he can be one of your point of attack defenders on a very good team or a championship team. But if you're asking him to guard the best player on the opposing team, I just did not think he was big enough nor good enough laterally to make up for his lack of size to be the best defender on a championship level team. This season, the Clippers had the 3rd highest defensive rating in the league, or lowest, however you want to call it, behind the Magic and the Thunder. And we knew the second we got this roster, and if you go back to my pods before the season, you can see that I said my prediction was we'll be a top 10 defense without Kawhi. With Kawhi, we'll be top 5. We were essentially a top 5 defense without Kawhi. And what does that come down to? Well, yeah, Zoo did get better at defense, but the difference is you put guys around him, particularly two guys in Kris Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr., that are going to guard the best players and get over screens to the point where Ivica Zubac doesn't have to guard two at once, where he can kind of stay closer attached to his guy. So then he can just, show for a second and then get back to his guy and be in rebounding position and shot blocking position where it feels like the guy that is going to go up has two guys around him, not just one, where he can just dump it off to whoever Zoo's guarding in the dunker spot. Now we had pick and rolls being blown up and shots being heavier or more contested, as opposed to guys coming off screens. And that's one thing I thought Terrence wasn't great at. I thought he was pretty good at guarding some bigger guys that try to bully him, like the likes of Kevin Durant and Luka Doncic. But against quicker guards, he even said he didn't love it. He was a lot of times just completely erased on screens, whereas Kris Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr. do a great job of picking their angles out and fighting through those screens. And, my co-coach, Will Johnson, always says, great players don't get screened. And, of course, there's so many BS illegal screens that guys get away with now. And, as big men that come out, you're not allowed to really hedge with contact anymore. And teams also don't do that because they don't want to give up 4-on-3 situations that usually lead to open threes. But that is a real thing. And fighting over screens, you can't do. Paul George even said it. It's not as much contact allowed as even 10 years ago. So it really gives the offensive player advantages. And Kris Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr., I thought they were incredible all season long, fighting over screens. Kris Dunn should have been an all defensive level player, or all defensive team guy. But of course, the game limit, the minutes limit, that nonsense. He didn't play enough games with 20 plus minutes. But let's just start with Kris Dunn, for example. Like, he and Derrick Jones Jr. kind of switched off, starting lineup wise. But then we had games where we started both of them. And they were both so good. I mean, Kris Dunn, moving his feet, fantastic in one-on-one. Fighting over screens, amazing. Doing a great job off ball, having his hands in the cookie jar, reading where a player was going to go. I mean, how many times did we see Kris Dunn read where a dribble handoff was going to go, or read where the pass was going to go back door, and just get his hands in there and come up with a steal? I mean, I thought he was incredible at that, and it allowed us to get out and transition offensively. And then Derrick Jones Jr., I talked about the ability he has to cover ground, in rotations, going from one guy to the next, or going from the weak side corner all the way to the basket to stop a lob or something like that. He's fantastic at that. He's got those long arms, moves his feet well, fights over screens well. So now you didn't have just one point of attack stopper. You have a guy that was just the best perimeter defender on a finals team in the Mavericks. So you have two guys that could do that, and it paid dividends. They did such a good job. Not to mention we had Nicholas Batum off the bench, and Kevin Porter Jr. wasn't even that half bad defensively when he was a part of the team. So point of attack defense is the difference. And sadly, none of those guys made the all-defensive team, but that's why we had the third best defense in the league. And as a conclusion, I thought we were the best defense I've seen in my time as a Clipper fan. But I'll tell you, and it's because, our roster was set up for us to be a good defense, which gave us that ability to never fully be out of games. Our offense at times was a struggle. It was a lot of times James Harden, pick and roll. We didn't have many other shot creators, but our defense always gave our offense a chance to catch up. And that was a breath of fresh air from this team. So having those guys that have the skills defensively is big. But in the playoffs, I will say it was a little bit of a letdown. We actually had a 109.4 defensive rating in the regular season. In the playoffs, it was 115.3, which would be good enough for about 20th in the regular season. So it would be tied for 22nd. So that's no good. And again, part of that is who you're playing, right? In the playoffs, everybody gets the same opponents. Well, not really, actually, based on if you're East or West, but you get your regular season opponents. So it's a different sample size, a much bigger sample size, but it's against all the teams. Whereas the playoffs are against one, and if you're lucky, multiple teams. So in the Clippers' case, that defensive rating is just because they were guarding one of the best offensive teams. However, 6 points less on average per 100 possessions is no good. So when you go and analyze it, do we think the Clippers' defense was bad in the playoffs? It could have been better, but I think a lot of our flaws were shown. We didn't have a backup center to replace Ivica Zubac. James Harden and Norman Powell aren't great defenders, and especially off ball. So when they're getting lazy off ball and in transition, that's where Denver exploits you. They're not like one of these teams that just plays pick and roll with all eyes on you. They really move without the ball. They cut well. So you have to be on your P's and Q's defensively and when you're off the ball. And we got exposed for being a little bit of a ball watching team off the ball, because on ball, we're very good defensively. When the defense is, the pick and roll or isolation, I mean, we can load up on that, or stagnant. We can lock that up pretty easily, but the Nuggets are not that. So it forces you to play at an even higher level defensively. And even the league's best defense was taken to 7 games by that Nuggets team. So it's not easy, but it exposed that Norman Powell and James Harden aren't great off ball defensively, and having them together causes some problems, especially when Norman Powell wasn't performing well enough offensively. But coming up, going to be talking about the one player that made the defensive team. How big of an impact did he have defensively? Going to be talking about him coming up. I got to tell you a little something about Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA Finals. And I can tell you from experience, I've been to so many incredible playoff games. Well, like not the finals, but so many incredible playoff games. The intensity of it, I can't even imagine what a finals is like. But the buzzer beaters, I've gotten to see Chris Paul's 2-game winners in the playoffs for the Clippers, and the fans losing it. There's nothing like the atmosphere of playoff basketball. And if you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. I was just on the app, and Zone Deals were offering 10% off exclusive Zone Deals for FIFA Club World Cup matchups all over America right now. I went to the game. Don't go to any games at the Rose Bowl, though. I'm just telling you that right now. I went to the game against, it was Atletico versus PSG. And it was the latest game I'd ever gotten to in my life, because the Rose Bowl sucks. So sorry, UCLA fans, it sucks. So don't go there, but anywhere else across the country that you're watching, definitely use that deal. Game Time makes scoring NFL tickets just as easy. You'll find great seats for as low as $100 thanks to exclusive discounts. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, so let's talk about the all defensive level player for your LA Clippers, Big Zoo, all NBA defensive second team, and it was extremely well deserved. Now, I'm not going to throw out a bunch of stats at you that, Ivica Zubac averaged this many blocks and whatnot. We know our defense was much better with Ivica Zubac on the court. I mean, he has gotten better at just understanding pick and roll defense. I think that comes with experience. But of course, I think the biggest change was having point of attack defenders, as I mentioned earlier. But I mean, Zoo's a great rim protector. He has really good timing on his block shots. He does a good job of playing 2 at once at times. I said he can't really, but I think he's not like the Anthony Davises or the Rudy Goberts or the Evan Mobleys who can do it consistently and can completely bail out a bad perimeter defense, kind of like Gobert did in Utah for all those years. But he does have the ability to contest and get the rebound when he's got better defenders around him at a higher level, because he doesn't have to help as much. You don't have to sell out as much when you have a guy that's still trailing the guy behind his back, as opposed to when he's coming off a screen, he's untouched, and now Zubac has to guard 2 guys at once. So when you look at, his abilities, he can rebound. I mean, there were so many times where the guy's contesting a shot and then grabbing the rebound off the shot he contests, which is huge. So it just having an anchor down there to erase shots, to change shots. I mean, the amount of games he's just affecting everyone's shot, where it's like you cannot put that into the stat sheet because it doesn't go in there. I mean, of course, there's like field goal percentage around the rim against this guy, but, you want to see all those possessions, and it's like, you don't know where is there anybody guarding the guy shooting besides Zoo, or is it just him? Like, it's just an interesting stat. You kind of need a little more specifics when it comes to that. But Ivica Zubac just continues to grow defensively. And I think, in previous eras, having a rim protector that it was the most important thing. I mean, especially if you go back to the pre-3-point line era when you had to go to the basket all the time, having a rim protector is the most important thing. But now I think it's changed the point of attack defense. I think you need guys that keeps, because this is a guard heavy league. It's not like you're guarding in the post a ton. Almost nobody's posting up like that. Although, and that's another argument for Zubac is Jokic. I mean, he's a great post up player. And Zoo, with his frame, with his strength, he did as good of a job as you could on Ivica Zubac. I mean, sorry, on Nikola Jokic. So, like, it's not like Jokic completely dominated us, but he was damn good. But Zoo did a pretty great job, and he did in the bubble as well. So I think even if the NBA had more post-up guys, I think that would actually favor Zoo a little bit more. Now, if you look at the lineups that played over 50 minutes this season for the Clippers, and you look at their defensive ratings, Ivica Zubac is on the top. Wow. He's in all of them. He's in all 12 of them. Lineups that played over 50 minutes. I guess maybe no lineups played. No lineups without Zubac played over 50 minutes. So that tells you, though, right then and there, we didn't have any lineup combination without Ivica Zubac that played over 50 minutes. I mean, the guy was integral for what we did this past season. Integral. And every single lineup that has the best defensive rating on our team has Zubac involved in it. I mean, he was our anchor. He absolutely deserved it. And again, it's just, you can't understate what having a rim protector can do for your defense, for the aggression of your perimeter players. But again, he's not like some crazy shot blocker, but he's there. He's there, and he's also a smart defender, I'd say, too. Just a smart player in general. Doesn't make too many dumb mistakes. Doesn't commit too many stupid fouls. He's pretty disciplined defensively, and that's what makes him great. But coming up, besides personnel, what else, or besides just sheer ability, what else goes into making your defense, what else goes into making or having a great defensive team? Going to be talking about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about Ollipop. Ollipop is a new kind of soda made for people who love the classic taste of soda but want something that supports their health. With just 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can, Ollipop is reimagining soda in a way that's better for your gut. Traditional sodas are loaded with sugar, like 39 grams in a regular Coke or 44 grams in an orange Fanta. Ollipop flips that script with just a fraction of the sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and gut-friendly ingredients like OlliSmart, a blend shown to support digestive and overall health. It's soda that tastes like the real thing, but actually does something good for your body. What flavor are you trying first? Cherry Cola, Classic Grape, or maybe Dr. Goodwin, their Dr. Pepper dupe? I like Ollipop. I've only had the Classic Grape, I believe, and maybe some strawberry, if that flavor even exists. I think it does. And it was good, and I'm excited to get some. Get a free can of Ollipop. Just buy any 2 cans in store, and they'll reimburse you for one. Head to drinkollipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find Ollipop near you. That's drinkollipop.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so before we get into the one person or the aspect I haven't mentioned that everyone's like, dude, how have you not mentioned this yet? I'll get there. I'm gonna. But I think one real thing that goes into being a great defensive team is something that's not quantifiable in stats or metrics, and that is how badly does your team want to defend on a nightly basis, on a possession-by-possession basis? Because today's NBA defenses are asked to do more than ever. With how much spacing there is on the court and how many rules favor the offense, you have to work and dig that much deeper within yourself to defend at a high level. However, I also think that there's a real, and this is coming from someone who's in youth basketball and all in it, there is a real lack of fundamentals in high school basketball all the way down in America. I will have our club team will lose to teams just because of, they're just more athletic right now. They have more established programs because my team is only a year old. But there's teams out there with talent not showing their players how to see man and ball at the same time. not showing their players how to be in the gaps defensively. And there's a lack, and because we live in the peak of highlight culture, how many times do you see defensive plays go viral that aren't steals and blocks? It has never been less cool to play defense. It has never been less valued to play defense. We are in a very offense first culture. We are in a very offense first NBA. And, I struggle, not struggle. I get my players to play defense, but it's something you really have to emphasize or else people won't take pride in it. And this started when I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? We were moving towards that later in the 2000s. So, you don't even have to, but so, this is not a locked on Clippers topic, but this is like a basketball topic. Does anybody play defense in the NBA anymore? That's a whole thing. And I think that's a mixture of things. I think that the side that says there's no defense being played is completely wrong, because if you watch the Clippers play this season, that completely counteracts what we do. We actually play defense, and that's part of why we're good. By the way, all the good defensive teams made the playoffs, just so you know. But the thing is this. There is validity, in my opinion, to defenses not playing very hard some nights, especially the bad teams. Like, there are some teams that people just don't understand how hard it is to guard. But there also is, in terms of, in my opinion, on a per game basis, a lack of pride defensively from guys in the league now, because their skill sets are more offense tailored, because that's what's valued more. Dribbling and shooting is what's valued more now in today's society. And then athleticism. That's what we look at mostly for scouting. Size, athleticism, dribbling, shooting. As opposed to this, when back in the day you had more specialist guys. You had guys that were maybe not as great all around, but they were super good at this particular aspect of defense or rebounding. And that has changed. That has made the league teams harder to guard. But I also think it's given us less players that are just like, you know what, I'm like less Kris Dunns. Guys that are just like, I want to play defense. I want to take pride in that every possession. That stuff matters. And I think having guys like Kris Dunn and Derrick Jones that are there for defense first reasons, it gives your team a defensive focus, a defensive intensity where it's like, we do this. And Willis Reed and Marcus Smart, I always reference this, but they've always said defense is like 80% effort. I forget the exact number they use, but it is. Because, yes, you need that skill that Kris Dunn and Derrick had, which is the lateral ability, the anticipation, the reading of players, understanding angles. That is a skill. But there's that want to. James Harden's not as bad of a defender as people think. He doesn't want to play defense all the time. And it's partially because of the offensive load he carries, but, want to matters. One thing I'll give Kawhi Leonard, he wants to play defense. He doesn't always guard the best players because he's offensive machine now. He's a number one option. But his assignment, I rarely say that he's low effort. Sometimes he can be lack of focus, but it's never low effort with Kawhi Leonard defensively. So, of course, Jeff Van Gundy, that was the thing I was talking about. Jeff Van Gundy gave us a defensive focus in terms of coaching staff. I mean, his reactions when we would give up open threes, even when they wouldn't go in, were very telling. He was constantly on his feet yelling instructions on D. And he said that we want to go back to forcing teams middle to funnel them to Zoo as opposed to forcing them baseline, which is a different tactic. I think back in the day, you probably forced guys to go middle more because you had big rim protectors there and less shooting on the court. But nowadays, teams don't want to let you get in the middle of the paint because that's when you can see the floor and make plays. So I think that was a different approach. Just be super uber aggressive and put pressure on opposing guards and then funnel them into Zoo. And I think that ended up taking place very nicely over the course of the season for us. But it's all about playing defense and wanting to play defense. Again, it's harder now, but guys are also lazier on that end. And you have less good defenders, in my opinion, in the league. Although your great defenders, the Drew Holidays, the Kris Dunns, you can think, what would they be doing if they were allowed to get more handsy like in the past? They'd be even better defenders. They probably want to play then. But the perimeter contact thing, that's all relevant. Like, these are all relevant things that matter. We talk about defense being played and, the conversation around defense in the NBA today. It's just, you need to push yourself a little bit harder. And again, I don't think you shouldn't be able to. They don't practice like they used to in the past. That's very public and everybody knows it. The culture around injury prevention, load management is a thing now. And people make excuses by saying, he deserves a rest. I understand. But we didn't have the same energy for the past. And again, that's when it comes down to, well, they have to cover more ground. Well, you're not practicing and you're playing less minutes and you have all these resources. So it kind of balances out, in my opinion, to some degree, and especially depending on how far we're going back. If we're going back to the 2000s, yeah, less physical NBA now, but definitely more cardio needed for sure than the 2000s. There's no doubt about it. But again, less full speed practices, more cooks in the kitchen. But I don't think technology has advanced in the last 15 years that much to the point where, you know, like I can see why the resting happens now. But I think it's also because people are getting injured left and right too. And that's coming from youth basketball as well and the culture around playing so many games. I think the kids that I coach play a lot of games, but I don't know how many of them are actually going to get to the league or D1. You know, that's where it's like, if I can't imagine if these guys played consistently and all the way through college and NBA, they probably going to have injury problems too because of how much they're playing. But it's only 1% or less that even go to the NBA. So it's, you know, that's a bigger discussion about defense. But in my opinion, in terms of the Clippers, Jeff Van Gundy put us a defensive focus out there. But it doesn't matter without the players. If you gave Jeff Van Gundy the Suns, I mean, you saw what Frank Vogel did. He had them playing better defense than what, you know, they probably were, but he's not making them a good defense. The Minnesota Timberwolves waxed them in the playoffs in 2024, even with Frank Vogel, who's a defensive mind. So it's all about the personnel at the end of the day, first and foremost. But having a defensive focus from your players and, of course, your coach, that matters as well. So credit Jeff Van Gundy. There's a lot of things that went into it as to why we had such a good defense, and I want to keep that identity. I really do want to keep that identity, and we kind of need to have good defenders around James Harden, especially when you have Norman Powell next to him, which poses the question, do we want to have a weak defensive backcourt? Can you afford to have 2 minus defenders on a championship starting lineup? And if that's where we're trying to go, can we afford that? I don't know. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to get us up to 8,000 subscribers. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.